The price of a Chinese takeaway has really been increasing in recent years, hasn't it? Isn't it rising? I mean, let's take an example. Plain boiled rice used to be about £1.30, it's now about £1.40. I've got more evidence. What about barbecued spare ribs? You know when you get, like, spare ribs, you know, a bit of barbecued ribs in a plum sauce. You pay about £4.30 for that. A couple of years ago, you'd have been looking at below £4. 10 years ago, you know, for the ribs, it's kind of ribs, isn't it? And it's all kind of like, you know, sort of drenched in a, well, it's like the sauce, with a plum. It's like, when you get it, and it's almost like it's ribs, isn't it? It's like, but, you know, it's just, well, I don't know whether you call it a syrup or a sauce. It's sort of somewhere between. But, you know, I mean, it's not too drippy, it doesn't drip off, but on the other hand, it's not too sticky, it's just right. And you wouldn't have thought, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily think that the ribs would go well with a plum, but these people are experts. I mean, it just goes right. You get the ribs, I mean, you might think, oh, yeah, I've got these ribs and they're a bit old, fatty, old meat from a condemned abattoir. But actually, when you get that plum on it, it's lovely, isn't it, a plum? The plum. Now, 10 years ago, the price of that, well, I can't remember. I'm not an expert on the exact prices of all the different dishes 10 years ago. That's not what I'm here for. But I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that the prices are rising. I mean, there is no point going on to me, oh, Paul, can you name the precise cost in 1995 of the friggin' rib stuff? You know, it's too specific. Don't ask me any more questions. A lot less than it was 2 years ago. I'll tell you that, it was less than £4 2 years ago. I mean, this has been going on for years, hasn't it? I mean, probably actually since Victorian times. I mean, I reckon in those days, you'd have had a comedian coming on stage, good morrow, wearing a top hat, a bit like me, but maybe not quite as camp, and saying, yes, the levy for a Chinese banquet, which may be consumed in one's residence, used to be around 1 farthing, now around 2 farthings. And the audience would have said, well, yes, but it's only the difference of a farthing. In those days, people accepted it. And therefore, that sort of comedy didn't tend to go down too well. Stop throwing your walking canes at me. I'm trying to talk about the price rises. Stuff you, I'm off for some opium. People weren't bothered. I mean, everything was so cheap in those days anyway. I mean, in the 19th century, you could buy a whole Chinese restaurant for a guinea. I don't know whether that's true. But now it is getting ridiculous what we're having to fork out for our dinners. I mean, people may speak of the dangers of volcanoes and weapons of mass destruction, but what about the invisible threat in our high streets? I don't mean ghosts. I'm talking about the escalating tariff of Oriental sustenance. I mean, how can they justify the increases? Now, obviously, there's the oft-heard refrain, isn't there, from the Chinese takeaway owners. Oh, well, what about the prices of the raw ingredients? Inflation, inflation. Well, I don't think that we should really think about inflation too much, because if we do, then the whole premise of what I'm saying can basically just fall apart. Anyway, a lot of the dishes are not affected by inflation. I mean, take, for example, crispy aromatical duck. I mean, basically, you're a Chinese takeaway owner, you're driving past a pond, you kill a duck, you make it into the crispy... I mean, we shouldn't even be charged for that dish, it should be free, that one. What about something like, you know, when it's a special fried rice? You know when sometimes you go into a takeaway and you just think, I'll have something a bit different tonight. Special fried rice. It's got bits of egg in it, isn't it? Oh, lovely. It's not just egg, of course, also it's got the peas. Well, it's the peas that make it special. I mean, when you lift up that lid of one of those little foil containers and you see that glint of pea, you know you're in for quite an evening. I mean, actually, you don't actually get that many peas in one of those containers. Not that many. In fact, there's always 9. I've checked. And always evenly spaced, no clusters. But it's just right there, just the right number, isn't it? Oh, yeah, and also, not just that, of course, you've got the king prawns in there. I mean, it's special enough with just the egg and the pea. The jar of sweet pork, I mean, the flecks of ginger. I mean, the dish is almost overwhelmingly special. I suppose it's something really to be enjoyed on a special occasion like... what about you, sir, sitting there looking like that? You look like a special sort of man. Yeah, I can imagine the two of us having an evening together. Yeah. We'd want to eat something quite luxurious, wouldn't we? Yes, we'd get home, and we'd eat all the prawn crackers and that first, and then we would just slowly unwrap that special hot rice. Share it. I'd sit on your lap. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Yes, there's nothing like just sitting there on the lap of some lovely man like you, the beginning of a beautiful romance, and then just biting into all that rice with the egg and the water chestnut. Oh, lovely, isn't it? Super. Really makes up for having a flippin' terrible life. You know, what consolation, after a lifetime of misery with the friggin' price rises and people forcing me to play crazy golf, I'll just bite into a load of old chewy old prawns. That's really going to take my mind off Al-Qaeda and worries like that. Sitting on the lap of some brute who cares nothing for my emotions. Just one thing on your mind, sir. Finish your rice, Paul, and get down to my cock. That's you. I don't know why I waste my time with you. You make me feel sick. Do you know how much that disc costs? They're laughing at us from their woks.